As soon as Jungkook's latest photos for Calvin Klein were released, the entire fashion industry in America seemed to stop for a moment. Something feels different about this campaign. Not just a photo, not just a handsome face or athletic body, but an energy like never before in Calvin Klein's long history. The world of fashion, accustomed to studio perfection and artificial lighting, is suddenly presented with visual honesty, sweat, eyes, and Jungkook's body language that feels more human, more real, but actually much stronger. In Manhattan, a few hours after the photo was released, several major fashion editors such as Vogue, GQ, and Harper's Bazaar called a small meeting to discuss the Jungkook effect. They're not exaggerating. The engagement data proves everything. In the first 24 hours, the campaign set a record for the largest digital interaction in the history of Calvin Klein campaigns, surpassing collaborations with Kendall Jenner and Justin Bieber. But what's interesting is not just the numbers. What really shook the industry was how Jungkook brought new DNA to a brand that for decades was synonymous with American sexiness. In this photo shoot, Calvin Klein seemed to let Jungkook change the meaning of sensuality itself. She does not appear as a model selling a body, but rather a figure that conveys emotions, confidence without arrogance, sensuality without exploitation, and authenticity without a mask. It's not sexy because he tries to be. It's sexy because it's real, one fashion critic told Vanity Fair. And that is what is now making American labels begin to rethink their approach to the sexy and iconic image. Many brands that have relied on hypermasculine aesthetics are now reassessing their visual strategies after seeing the public reaction to Jungkook's campaign. This phenomenon is not just a big fanbase effect. It's a paradigm shift that Asian stars, especially Jungkook, now have as much cultural and visual influence as even American stars in their own homes. The photographer behind the photo shoot, Mert Alice, who previously handled global icons such as Madonna and Rihanna, said he was surprised by how Jungkook interacted with the camera. In his interview, Mert said he doesn't pose, he breathes through the lens. That is, Jungkook does not do poses like other models who think about every corner of the face or posture. He lives in front of the camera, channeling emotions through spontaneous looks and gestures without calculation. Therein lies its main attraction, authentic but deadly. The American fashion industry, which has been known as a perfectionist, is beginning to realize that imperfection is precisely a new form of visual appeal. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, several creative directors of brands such as Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren are even rumored to have asked their teams to study the lighting, tone, and framing concepts of the Jungkook CK campaign, not to imitate, but to understand why this feels so alive. While another photographer, Ethan James Green, called the campaign a turning moment in global fashion history, he said, "When Jungkook entered Calvin Klein, the brand stopped being nostalgic, it became alive again." In other words, Jungkook is not just an advertising model, but a visual catalyst that gives new life to brands that have lost relevance amid the digital generation. From the business side, Jungkook's effect was even more dramatic. Calvin Klein's US retail sales jumped 87% in the 3 days following the campaign, with sales doubling from the same period last year. But interestingly, most of the buyers are first-time customers aged 18 to 28. Years a young segment that has been difficult to reach classic brands such as Calvin Klein. Marketing analysts refer to this as the Jungkook demographic shift, a phenomenon in which older brands succeed in penetrating younger markets through authentic figures, not through massive promotions. From the social media side, the impact is even wider. The hashtag number Jungkook's Calvin Klein crossed over 500 million views on TikTok in 48 hours. But what surprised observers was not just the number, but the tone. The majority of user-uploaded content focused on aesthetic appreciation, composition, color tones, and photographic expression, not just fan service. This means that the public treats Jungkook as not just an idol, but a cultural image maker. Behind all the hype, there is something deeper. This photo shoot proves that the era of dominance of the image of America as the center of global fashion is shifting. America is no longer dictating global tastes, they are instead starting to learn from Asia. And Jungkook is living proof that Korean stars are no longer just part of the K-pop trend, but a driving force in the direction of the world's visual culture. In every picture frame, in every shadow and gaze, Jungkook seems to be speechless, that the greatest attraction is not what you show, but what you elegantly hide. The American fashion industry has finally realized that sometimes authenticity is more revolutionary than perfection. In the world of American fashion, there is a rarity. The entire top editor suddenly agrees on one thing. It happened when the Jungkook x Calvin Klein photoshoot appeared to the public. Usually, magazines like Vogue, Elle, and Harper's Bazaar have diverse tastes and opinions, sometimes opposite. But this time, they are compact. Jungkook is not just a model, he is a cultural reset. The photoshoot forced the Western fashion industry to reflect, questioning again the aesthetic standards that they had considered absolute for decades. Jungkook appears not like a K-pop star invited to be the face of a brand, but like an artist who is in full control of the visual atmosphere. The aura is felt in every frame. Natural lighting, non-contrived gestures, and almost documentary expressions, not a fashion campaign. Many wonder, why can the results be so intense? The answer turned out to be simple. Jungkook came to the shooting site not to be someone, but to be himself. In the initial briefing, Calvin Klein's creative team gave the direction only a large concept, authentic confidence. But once the cameras were on, Jungkook brought a whole new meaning to the word. He doesn't just believe in himself, he makes the camera believe in him. When some behind-the-scene photos leaked to the American media, the professional reaction was swift. Several senior photographers wrote on X, Twitter, that they had never seen such raw authenticity in a global fashion campaign in the last decade. Even one of the legendary photographers, Stephen Klein, who often photographed Madonna and Brad Pitt, called Jungkook's photo, feels like a revival of the spirit of the 90 seconds, but with the soul of Gen Z. The sentence spread quickly to the fashion media. Calvin Klein, once known as a fashion house with a provocative minimalism style, is now perceived as a brand reborn through emotion. And Jungkook is the pivot. Interestingly, amid the praise, some American fashion insiders admitted that they initially underestimated the influence of Asian stars in high-end fashion campaigns. But they were wrong. Jungkook's photoshoot opened their eyes to the power of Asian culture that now cannot be ignored. During a panel discussion at Parsons School of Design, one of the senior fashion communication lecturers even made Jungkook's campaign a case study on global aesthetic migration, how Asian visual styles are now dominating global fashion perceptions. But what makes Jungkook so powerful in the eyes of the industry? The answer lies in small gestures, not big dramatizations. In some close-ups, Jungkook does not smile, does not show off the body, but his gaze contains a story, a kind of mixture of tranquility and mystery. In the American fashion world, accustomed to the expression bold confidence, Jungkook's style teaches the power of silence. This is interesting, because in Western visual theory, such an expression nonchalant calm is usually identified with French elegance. But now, the style has a new face, a Korean artist named Jungkook. Furthermore, Jungkook breaks the line between a music idol and a fashion icon. In the history of American fashion, few have managed to do it naturally. It usually takes years for a musician to be accepted as a true fashion icon. Just look at the journey of Rihanna or Harry Styles. But Jungkook, it did so in a matter of months, and without a major American campaign before. One of the reasons the industry is so enthralled is because Jungkook doesn't copy American fashion styles. He brings a fresh and aesthetically pleasing Asian perspective, yet remains universal. He treats clothing not as a costume, but as an extension of identity. Vogue US editor Chioma Nadi wrote, "The most powerful fashion icons are the ones who are unaware they're creating a moment. Jungkook does exactly that." On the other hand, American stylists began to study how Korean creative teams work. They were amazed at how this campaign did not highlight the luxury of the brand, but built an intimate visual narrative. Jungkook was photographed not on a glamorous set with exaggerated props, but rather in a simple space, industrial shades, natural lighting, and ash tones that made the focus fall on him. From there, many American fashion houses began experimenting with the quiet authenticity approach. A new trend was born: honest luxury. This phenomenon is now spreading to major brands, from Levi's to Coach, which are starting to emphasize the narrative of authenticity rather than glamour. It all started with a Jungkook x Calvin Klein photoshoot. It's no exaggeration that many fashion analysts have called it a cultural shock for America, a moment in which the fashion world realized that the greatest attraction of the century was not perfection, but beautiful-looking honesty. Jungkook proved that you don't need to be part of Hollywood to redefine Hollywood itself. And for the first time in the history of American fashion, a Korean artist becomes a new aesthetic barometer, not a guest on the Western stage, but the center of attention in a space that once closed its doors to Asian faces. From there, the American industry finally learned one important thing: authenticity sells better than aspiration. When a Calvin Klein billboard with Jungkook's face appeared in the middle of Times Square, the atmosphere of the usually bustling city suddenly had a new feel. People stopped walking. The camera of the phone is directed upwards. Even some American tourists who don't know much about K-pop ask, "Who is that guy?" But interestingly, they don't ask about it out of curiosity about fame, but because the visual aura is different, like there is a narrative that can be felt from just one still photo. And this is where the turning point happens. The American fashion world, which has always been known for its fast, loud, and exclusive dynamics, suddenly had to admit something they never imagined: that the future face of their industry turned out to come from Seoul, not from New York or Los Angeles. When the Jungkook x Calvin Klein campaign was released in Times Square, New York Fashion Week had just concluded. Designers, models, editors, and influencers are still busy talking about spring color trends. But as soon as the billboard went up, the chatter changed direction. Some American fashion magazines even wrote headlines with an almost amazed tone. "Forget the runway, Jungkook just won New York without saying a word." This phenomenon went viral not because of the effects of fandom alone, but because the professional fashion public really noticed it. They admit that Jungkook's visuals managed to beat the complexity of fashion runways with one simple element: honesty. On Madison Avenue, where the world's luxury boutiques gather, some brand managers called this photo shoot a wake-up call. They realized that the younger generation of America now believes more in figures that appear honest than in images that are made up. One of the trend analysts at WGSN even wrote an internal report titled "The Jungkook Effect," from spectacle to substance. It explains how Jungkook sparked a change in the psychology of young consumers, from simply buying fashion for status to buying out of emotional connection. The photoshoot not only featured Calvin Klein products, but also created an atmosphere. Dark tones, rough textures, natural lighting, it all seems like a statement that simplicity can be more provocative than glamour. Observers judge this to be Jungkook's core strength. He doesn't sell products, but flavors. There is depth in every photo, as if every frame holds a personal story. It differs from the American fashion style, which usually flaunts pomp and structure. Jungkook instead brings a mysterious softness and serenity. It makes the camera a mirror, not a stage. And behind all that, there is an interesting irony. America, once the fashion mecca of the world, is now learning from Asia how to sell authentic emotion. The effect is felt immediately. In the week after the campaign went viral, the American Google Trends recorded a surge in searches with the keyword Jungkook Calvin Klein aesthetic. This means that the public is not only interested in Jungkook as an artist, but wants to understand his visual style. At some fashion universities such as FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology, and Pratt, photography lecturers even use this photoshoot as a reference for lighting and framing analysis for visual identity in fashion campaigns classes. Some students called it the most cinematic campaign they had ever seen in the context of commercial fashion. Interestingly, this also sparked reflection among young American photographers.